The following program is a production of Pioneer Public Television. Your Legislators is made possible in part by the generous financial support of Southern Minnesota Beet Sugar Cooperative, a highly sustainable, shareholder-driven cooperative that safely produces, processes, and markets sugar while being environmental stewards to ensure future opportunities for its shareholders, employees, and surrounding communities. Additional support by MAPE members, making Minnesota clean waters, safe communities, quality education, and veterans care happen. We work hard for Minnesotans. And by Ask Me Council 5, a union of 43,000 members who advocate for excellence in public services, dignity in the workplace, and opportunity and prosperity for all working families. Live from St. Paul, we welcome you to another session of Your Legislators, a roundtable discussion featuring state lawmakers answering your questions and discussing important issues affecting the citizens of Minnesota. Join the conversation online on Twitter and Facebook. Now here's your moderator for tonight's program, Barry Anderson.
Good evening and welcome to this week's Your Legislators. We're delighted that you have joined us this week, and we're hoping that you'll join us in the weeks ahead as we begin, I wouldn't say coast, I think maybe we're speeding up towards the end of the legislative session. We weren't with you last week. We had, the network had some fundraising to do. They accomplished that task, and now we're back in the saddle and ready to answer your questions. Hence the catchy name, Your Legislators. So we hope that you'll call in those questions or send them to us electronically. We're also on Facebook Live, and you can reach us via Twitter as well, and the various methods of getting there will all be displayed on your television screen. In the meantime, we're going to begin this evening's program, as we do each week, by introducing our distinguished panel of guests who will help us unravel the mysteries of St. Paul. So turning to my immediate left, a guest with us in the past from District 67A in St. Paul, Representative Tim Mahoney. Representative Mahoney.
Good to see you.
Delighted to have you with us this evening. Tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Let's see. I live about a mile from where I grew up. I represent 67A, which is the east side of St. Paul. I'm a retired pipe fitter. I have served at the Capitol for probably 20 years now. And I have spent most of my time on the Jobs and Economic Development Committee. Serving on a whole variety of others, but that's the one that I've kind of done most of my work with.
Very good. Also joining us from District 66 in Roseville, frequent guest over many, many years, Senator John Marty. Senator Marty, tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Glad to be with you, Barry. Yeah, I'm from Roseville and been serving in the Senate for a long time, 30 years now, and represent Roseville, 3 other suburbs, and a big chunk of St. Paul now. I used to represent 8 suburbs and none of St. Paul, but things change. And I currently am the lead minority member of Senator Osbeck's Energy Committee and have spent a lot of time on energy, on healthcare, and environmental, whole range of issues, which I think most of us end up doing.
From District 33 in Mound, Senator David Osbeck. Senator Osbeck has also been with us in the past. Senator Osbeck, tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I come from a little town. Actually, Barry, you mentioned Hutchinson earlier before we started. I come from a little town called Biskie, between Hutchinson and Glencoe. Currently reside in Mound on the west shores of Lake Minnetonka with my wife and my 2 daughters. I serve as the chair of the Energy and Utilities Committee, also on transportation, capital investment. I'm going to enjoy touring the state this year and finding out more and more about the state, and just glad to be with you today.
And finally, from District 44A, Plymouth, Representative Sarah Anderson. Representative Anderson.
Well, thank you for having me on. I'm from the Plymouth area. I serve on taxes and commerce. I'm the chair of the State Government Finance Committee. I serve on Ways and Means and then pensions as well. And so that all keeps me very busy. But I've noticed that we have the east side and the west side here.
Yes, yes, it is.
But
all Metro this time, though.
All Metro.
It's unusual.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if you have questions about ditches and the mowing of same, feel free to call them in. We'll take them. You know.
I do sit on the Ag Committee.
So there you go. You're our expert for
Policy
the
and
evening.
finance. Yeah.
Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, that's all. That's all I've got for you.
All right, very good. So let's begin our discussion this evening talking a little bit about the budget. and sort of global questions of where we might be going with the surplus and how that's going to get used. We recognize, or I recognize anyway, that perhaps we don't have all the information on the table yet, but let's start with where we are right now. Let me start with you, Representative Anderson. Where do you see us going with the budget? What priorities do you see that you'd like to see followed? And let's go around the table and see where everybody's at.
Sure. Well, we have a good problem on our hand in the fact that we have a budget surplus. That surplus increased from the December forecast by another $250 million. So we're talking at over $1.6 billion in a budget surplus overall. And for Minnesota, that means that we can look at priorities like tax relief for Minnesotans. I think that's a key issue, as well as a good transportation program that will help get our roads and bridges fixed. And then for me, in the area that I represent, schools are very important. So if we can hit those three big things, I think that we will have a success at the legislature.
Representative Mahoney?
I suspect there'll be a significant tax proposal coming forth. I don't know how much money that'll leave for anything else, whether it's schools or roads, or in my case, the ag world is in serious trouble right now. They've got low commodity prices, high prices for their fertilizer and their equipment and their fuels. It'll be difficult, and I would love to see us help the farmers out in greater Minnesota move beyond this. My other area that I've spent a lot of time in is economic development. And anything you do in economic development, it's like the python trying to swallow the pig. It takes a long time to get to see the results. It's a couple years, and we have been on an 8-year, 9-year economic upswing. So we are closer to the next recession. So this should be the time that we should be putting into place programs that help, whether it's small towns, mid-sized towns, or the metro area. What's the thing we're going to need in 2 years? And that's a $150 million kind of push. We have sustained recessions before. We've done well with them. We haven't been hurt as badly as the rest of the country. I think the next one might hit us a little harder than we think.
Senator Martin?
I am concerned about a lot of factors we won't know about yet, not just what's going to happen with the economy. And you're right. I mean, after this many years of non-recession, the economists say we're going to get one soon, maybe. But I think on top of that, the thing that bothers me is the concern about what happens in Washington, where things are happening very quickly, what the results of them will be. And I'll just mention, because I do serve on Health and Human Services Committee, that the medical assistance, the Medicaid funding, if the changes that have been proposed in the last week or so happen, that could have $1 billion plus hit on the state. We could say, well, we're not going to take care of that, but I hear most of colleagues of both parties saying for nursing homes, they need more funding. For a lot of things like that, the most expensive things need more funding. And so if we have $1 billion or more of federal pullbacks, how are we going to respond to that? And I'm concerned how fast this thing happens. I saw a tax proposal, but I haven't heard much of the details of it yet. So maybe somebody knows more about what's in. I haven't seen the details yet, but we have so far this year, just on the 5% of the individual insurance market, we've spent in the Senate, I think the House is a little less, but we've spent $900 million for what I'd call a temporary fix to 5%, 4% of the insurance market. And at that rate, you very quickly burn through the entire budget surplus. And I'm worried that if we're not ready, what happened 15 years ago happens. The state, well, we cut taxes, we did some other things, and then the recession hit, and all of a sudden we spent a decade in debt. And I don't think that's good policy for us, and I don't think either party should want that. And I think we should be working the best we can to preserve that, to preserve our surplus, to preserve the backup money we have, the reserve for bad times.
Senator Osborne?
Well, I think the message that I took from the November elections was that the electorate in Minnesota and maybe across the nation is tired of business as usual, and what they're looking for is to shake things up. And I'm not saying we spend it all in one location. I think there's a balanced approach, but I think it needs to be centric on the voters and what the voters are wanting. And one of them is they need some tax reduction. And what that form is can vary. It can be Social Security exemption. It can be lowering of commercial and industrial property taxes. There's a lot of different proposals out there, and I think we're going to start seeing that. Also, people are demanding that we invest in transportation in roads and bridges, particularly in the outstate area. When you talk about farmers, one of their major concerns is how do I get my product to market when I can't drive on the roads? So I think you're going to see a significant investment in roads and bridges. And then the last component, of course, is education, because we do have a responsibility to our students, but it needs to be all in a balanced approach where we can have what we need to get this Minnesota through the next 2 years and beyond. And really, when you look at a $1.6 billion surplus, that's an indicator that we're collecting more revenue than we really should. So there has to be a significant amount of tax relief, and that can take many forms. I'm looking forward to seeing those budget targets come out tomorrow. At least in the Senate, I believe the budget targets hit tomorrow on Friday.
Budget targets in the House, when does that happen?
I don't know.
Okay.
That's above my pay grade.
All right, very good. So let's talk about some specific issues, and then the questions that viewers have, and then we're going to come back to some of the topics that this conversation has introduced, including education and some other things. But we have one viewer that has given a great deal of historical background, which I'm not going to go into here, about all of the money that can be made by legalizing marijuana. And this viewer wants to know if this legislature is going to legalize marijuana. We'll start with you, Representative Mahoney. What's going to happen with legalizing marijuana,
Well,
if anything?
This simple answer is no. No, it's not going to get legalized at this time. It's certainly something we as a legislature, we as a state should look at. The federal government, Attorney General Sessions, to remember his name, has been very clear that he does not support that. And even in the 9 or 10 states that have legalized it, he's hinted, he's indicated that he's going to do everything he can to roll it back there. So that'll be interesting. But no, I don't think it's going to happen here. I think our resources would be better spent with our opiate problem, with helping people get into recovery that need it. But we're not going to.
Any thoughts on
I'm going to guess we're all going to agree it's not likely to happen in Minnesota. I'm not one who's big into prohibition, and I don't think our drug war has been very successful, but I also would challenge, I'm not sure it's a huge revenue generator that the individual might think, but I think regardless of whether it is or isn't, I don't think it's likely to happen in Minnesota. I pushed medical marijuana bills 20 years ago, and they took many years to pass.
It took 20 years to pass.
It took 20 years to pass. And, but I think that I don't expect, unless either of you think differently, I don't think we're going to be doing anything on any marijuana law changes this year.
I tend to agree. I don't see a way that there's a path for this to come forward. This comes from the guy who was one of the chief pushers for
Freudian slip here.
for Sunday sales in Minnesota, which we were successful in passing. But no, I really don't see us making that move, and I absolutely agree that the opioid problem is something we need to focus on, and I was one of the people that voted for medicinal cannabis. I try to define it because something like that is just another tool in the arsenal of pain management, and I think it's something that was well past its time, and I agreed with it because it's very constricted to those conditions that would actually benefit from it, but I just don't see recreational marijuana coming up.
You know, your comment about Sunday sales, when you see how much attention came to that little change, you can see why talking about legalization of marijuana is not, I mean, it would be 1,000 times bigger than Sunday liquor sales.
Right.
But
Well, didn't the governor himself say that he wasn't interested in it?
Right.
Yeah.
right, the governor's been pretty clear on that, too.
You know, with the medical cannabis, we put a lot of constrictions on it. And I have a friend whose grandson, because they don't allow prescription changes that easily, when his grandson builds a resistance to the prescription he's on, and they have to continue to increase it, and then all of a sudden it stops working, and they have to wait a while before they can get this young child another. We at some point need to look at the medical cannabis to figure out how if we're going to have, and this young grandson is an epileptic, so he went from having 200 seizures in a week to having 2. Huge difference, but then it builds back up. So we really, as a legislature, need to look at how we make that more usable for the people that need it.
And it's just not the dosage, too. It's also the conditions that might be expanded to. But the thing about this, and working in the medical industry, is we have to be very careful in the conditions we allow.
Oh, yeah.
Because we don't want somebody with a headache getting some of these types of things. We want to make sure it's for the conditions that actually will have some significant improvement on.
Yeah.
One of the frequent questions that we've received over the years, periods of time when it hasn't been an issue, but it is an issue once again, is whether or not there's any interest in the legislature in addressing possible use of the prison located in Appleton. And we have a question from a viewer about that. Representative Anderson, let me start with you. What's been going on in that question, if anything?
Oh, boy. I don't serve on public safety, but I know that there's been proposals, at least in the last biennium, discussing the usage of the Appleton prison. And I think the most recent proposal, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, I think would actually just use the space but then have it run by the state. And I think some of the concern was that they didn't want to have it as a private operation. And so I think there's probably less opposition to have it being run by the state versus a private operation. And it's good space, and the problem that we have here in the state is that space and being able to house offenders in a safe manner. So that gives us some options. And but you guys can correct me if you know better where it's at this year.
Representative, what do you think?
I've heard some of the same things. I've heard that somebody was making a proposal to, if our president follows through on his undocumented immigrant proposals, to use that as a place to keep people. I like to think of it as warehousing. But my only concern with Appleton is it's quite a ways away. So if someone from the metro area gets stuck there, or earns the right to spend some time there,
you gotta get out more. Come on. It's a really small state when you travel.
Oh, Appleton's a good 2.5, 3 hours, and if you have, it is humorous for us, but there's a lot of people that don't have cars. We just heard in the Economic Development Committee proposal for, I can't remember, it was $1 million or $10 million, and it would. No one was opposed to it to help people get vehicles, because it's the really one thing that makes a difference in poverty or being able to keep a job and start providing some of the stuff for yourself. And that is one of the issues with Appleton. There's no real bus service out there. If we need it, I would prefer to see us empty out our prisons a little bit more and get nonviolent offenders out of our prisons. And, if all you did was sell a bag of weed, there's no reason to have somebody in jail. You should be on probation. You should be on supervised release. There are other things that we can do, and it's much, much cheaper. And as chair of the state government finance, you should be thrilled at the idea of keeping our costs down.
Well, I think my concern is that when I talk to the police officers that we have in the state, those crimes that you view as being minor or small are what leads to larger crimes. And I know that at least in the city that I live in, they focus a lot on trying to crack down on the small crimes so that they don't grow into bigger crimes. And I think that as a state, that's part of our responsibility as well.
Senator, your thoughts?
In terms of the crime issue in general, I have not heard any more than these two have about what's going on with Appleton. But in terms of I don't disagree, you should address the small crimes, but you don't address them by locking people up. It's a lot more trying to divert people away from the prison system, away from crime, and I think we don't do a good job of that. I think we should be, I'm a big believer in investment. Tim spends his effort a lot on capital investments and physical investments, but I think our investments in people. Kids who take a wrong turn, the faster we can help steer them a different direction, the better. Chemical dependency, a huge problem in the state, not worse here than other places, but you look at the people in prison, 3/4 of the people in prison are there either because they have a serious, or they happen to have a very serious mental health issue, or they have chemical dependency problem, or both. And to me, the more we can do things to help people with addiction problems, to help people with mental health problems, the better off we're going to be in reducing crime. And I don't disagree that we should take small matters and try and deal with them, but I don't think that, I don't think you're suggesting, that minor things mean you should throw somebody in jail for doing things that aren't good but aren't equivalent of sending somebody to jail or to prison. I think we should be working to help people, steer them the right way. And like chemical dependency, I don't think we should treat it as much a crime as we should treat it as a health issue.
Well, let's talk about recidivism rates, because, you know, it's one thing about having the location and needing the location, and my understanding is we'd talk about leasing Appleton and then having the state operate, which I think actually is a pretty good idea, because when we find out we don't need it, we can get rid of the lease. But the other part, the component, is recidivism, and I'm actually working on a bill, and Senator Miller is going to pick it up on Monday to help fund a program that I happen to know about that has half the recidivism rate that the current population has, which demonstrably will show savings to the taxpayer, because every time you send somebody back to prison, the number is something like $27,000 it costs the state to incarcerate somebody. But if you can cut in half that recidivism rate, for a small amount of money, you can save a whole bunch of money on the front end. So I'm working in that direction. We're hoping we can maybe find the money. We got $1.6 billion. I'm hoping we can take off a little bit of money for something like this. But it's those types of programs that government needs to look at to save themselves money. And some people will say, well, you're spending it. No, you're spending it to save money as well as create productive citizens that are going to be taxpayers. And one thing we can all agree upon is we want more taxpayers in Minnesota.
And there's a program just 4 or 5 blocks from here that has a 95% success rate with people coming out of prison 2 years out. And the recidivism rate, I need to make sure I pronounce that correctly, typically happens within the first 6 months to 12 months. And you're correct. I don't know which bill that is, but certainly send me the House file and I'll sign on. I'm sure you've got somebody in mind on already, though.
Representative Hertas has it. We might even be talking about the same location. It's over off of Hennepin.
So one little advertising piece, we won't go into the discussions here, but treatment courts, which function under the judiciary, are an example of some of this and have been proven to be popular and successful. So part of this conversation. Let's move on. Viewers from Facebook Live want us to talk about various bills that have been offered in connection with gun issues, both positions that I would describe as generally expanding gun rights. Then we have a bill, I understand there's a bill pending dealing with background checks. Is there anything happening on this legislation, and any thoughts about where it might go this session? Let's start with you, Senator Osmek.
I think in the Senate we've been taking a very cautious approach to any additional gun bills. I'm not on the judiciary. There have been a number of different bills that have come across from the House. I think Representative Nash continues to be an advocate for letting people have their constitutional rights and then not impinging upon them. So we can all debate on whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think always good having the exercise of your constitutional rights is always usually a good thing. But right now in the Senate, we're taking a much more measured approach in where we're going.
Representative Mahoney, any thoughts?
I certainly could not support I don't know what to call it. It's permitless carry or something like that, where if you own a gun, you can carry a gun so long as you're not restricted by law from carrying a gun. And it's I don't see the need, and frankly, there's this big fear of crime, getting hurt and getting shot. And I think we have had maybe a half a dozen or a dozen reported instances, now there could be more, where a gun was used to protect themselves. But it certainly instills fear in my particular district. Background checks, I'm not sure which way those bills went. I didn't follow that particular one. I've always been a supporter of background checks.
Senator?
I support background checks, too. I think what Senator Osmick said is probably accurate, that I think the Senate's going to be more cautious on this than the House. I'm very concerned both about the, I don't know, some would call it a castle doctrine or stand your ground, where you have the right to defend yourself against any fear you have, or they'll probably use the word reasonable fear. Well, that really is a risk if you are, you know, if some kid breaks in your garage, steal a bike or something, you kill them, you may have had legitimate fear under that law that you're defending your home and so on. I don't know that that's appropriate behavior. I think there are other solutions to addressing bicycle theft. But I do think that the House moved ahead on some of those bills in committee, but I'm not sure what the House is going to do on the floor. I really think the Senate is, yeah, I don't think we've had any hearings in the Senate on those bills, and I don't think they're likely to.
Representative Anderson?
Well, you know, I think it was today that they discovered or solved the mystery, a 30-year-old mystery, I think here in St. Paul.
Yep.
A woman was 81 pounds, I think, she was, or 90 pounds, and she was 81 years old when she was murdered in her home, I believe it was. And I think about, you know, it's different when you're a woman and you have somebody coming into your home, and the time that you have, and the if the other person is physically larger than you, you don't have a lot of options to defend yourself. And, you know, I think that some of these bills are taking a look at what can we do to make sure that law-abiding citizens are feeling safe in their homes and their communities and have the ability to defend themselves against, unfortunately, bad actors that there are. And we're seeing more and more home invasions, and, you know, I think that that's a concern. Certainly, I would hope that through our activism in law enforcement that we can protect citizens, but I think that we also need to have the conversation about some of these other issues, and I think that's what some of the lawmakers are doing at this point.
On that point, I mean, I think people should have the right to defend themselves in their homes. I think absolutely should. I think there's a difference between a 90-pound woman who's being attacked by somebody who's coming in there to do her harm and somebody who's stealing a bike out of a garage, trying not to be seen, who doesn't want to confront you. I mean, most thieves are not trying to confront somebody. There's a clear difference there, and our laws have always given people the right to defend themselves. If they fear somebody's trying to hurt them, that's one thing. The point of the changes in the law to make it so that even if you could get away, in the Trayvon Martin case in Florida several years ago, a guy chasing after a guy and ends up killing him, saying, I was afraid because he was going to hurt me. Your first duty is to try and stay away from it. And if you're in your own home, no, you don't have to flee your own home. But there's a big difference there in the idea that if you're a person of color, if you're an African-American man, people are much more afraid of them. Legitimately or not, they're afraid of them, and if we have the laws here, you basically have, you can't convict somebody beyond a reasonable doubt if they're right, if they have a right to. If I had any fear about Tim, I can shoot him.
People have wanted to.
Yeah, that's not a good system, and I think yes, I absolutely think it's appropriate that people should be able to defend themselves with gun or whatever way, but I think the law already allows that. My concern is expansion of that. And that's what my concern about that bill is.
Yeah, and in St. Paul, 300,000 people, 100,000 households. There were 14 home invasions last year.
That's a lot.
Your chances in that are about 1 in 10,000 or something like that?
I guarantee if you went 10 years ago, you would have had one.
If I had what?
You had had one 10 years ago.
No, not really. I just saw the numbers.
I'm sorry, I wouldn't want to play with the numbers that you have 14 home invasions, no matter how many homes that you have. That's a lot.
I think with
That's
the Castle Doctrine, though, we're talking about more codifying what's currently in law. I think that's the direction that has been going. And in response to Senator Marty and the bicycle type of scenario, I mean, obviously, if somebody is stealing your bike and you pull out a gun and you shoot them, that's a whole different story versus you're at your house, you're a female, it's 10 o'clock at night, it's dark, there's activity in your garage, you happen to have your gun. You go out, you're not looking for a fight, but you're going out to see what's going on in your garage, and you see the flash or you see the glint of something and maybe someone that looks like a gun, and you have a right to defend yourself. So,
Right.
you know, I don't like to make an easy flip scenario that sounds unrealistic, but there are realistic situations where you have a right, even though you're not backing up, you have a right to actually defend yourself. And I think that's the direction we've been trying to go with Castle Doctrine.
Well, we probably aren't going to resolve this issue tonight. I don't know why I think that, but I think that's probably the case. So let's move on to a different topic. We have another question from our Facebook Live audience that wants to know what's been happening on the bonding bill and potential bonding issues. And I think that's a great question. We haven't discussed it much over the last couple of weeks. Anybody want to take a run at it?
Bonding starts in the House.
So, well, then
We'll start in the House.
So we'll start with you. We'll start with you, Representative Anderson. Talk about bonding.
Well, actually, my committee is hearing a bunch of bonding bills
See,
tomorrow.
there you go. Nice work,
So-
Senator Osmick.
He knew.
He
Yeah.
teed it up. So we're going to be discussing some of those projects and then sending it on to the Capital Investment Committee that deals with bonding overall. And, you know, we haven't had a bill, we didn't have a bill last year, and I don't know if we'll have a bill this year, but I think that Representative Erdahl is looking at all the projects. It takes a long time to do all of that and review them and figure out which ones make sense, which ones are shovel-ready. And so I think that he's doing a good job of doing his homework and figuring out if we were to do a bonding bill, what projects would be included in it.
I await the bonding bill with bated breath. I have not seen or heard of much activity in the Capital Investment Committee. You're correct. Most of them are moving through the finance committees. Typically, there's a little bit more excitement at this particular point in a session on a bonding bill. We live on rumors up there, and you just don't hear any speaking or talking of a bonding bill. So I think if there is one, it's 2 days before we end the session. It wouldn't surprise me if it's 2 days before the end of session.
And I have no inside scoop on what's going on with the bonding bill. I have one good old proposal of my own that's getting a hearing next week. So some of these things are slowly moving through the process. Because of the fact we didn't have a bill last year, and because there's a backlog, I think especially some areas, higher education, the backlog of deferred maintenance, I think those are things that, like you said, trying to reduce recidivism. I think it's a question of the old ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I think we, in terms of a lot of our infrastructure needs, we're way behind on, and it's smarter to take care of it now before it falls apart. So I'm very much hoping we have a bill this year because we didn't last year, and when we miss a year, we seem to not make up for it. We just kind of, we put a longer waiting list on things that have been waiting, and some of which are urgent.
I remember one year we had 2 big bonding bills.
Very rare.
On the Senate side, we did move, actually was almost an identical bill to the one that died in the last 15 minutes on the Senate floor last year. We have moved that through cap investment, through, I sit on transportation, I believe it's in finance right now. And I think people need to understand that bonding bill a little bit. It had a significant investment in transportation. I mean, there was cash components that were very significant. It had my Highway 12 safety money in it. And, you know, one thing to mention on that is that barrier that we put in, the Jersey Wall, that actually, the first day it opened, already benefited Minnesotans. We had a person bump against it that had a medical emergency, and it saved a life. So there's a lot of good in that bill. And always when you have a bonding bill, and I've only been around for 4 years, significantly less than my colleagues here, but there's always always have to have items in there to try and get votes, and that's just the way bonding works. And I know that there's some more conservative people. It's hard to believe there's more conservative people than me, but you do have to spend money on bonding projects to fix our prisons, to fix our school districts, to our higher education system, to fix our roads. So there are good in there. That there are a couple of stinkers, but that's just the way the bonding situation works. You need a supermajority to pass anything with bonding.
Need a 60% vote.
Did you want to define some of those stinkers?
We'll leave that to be mentioned later.
No, it doesn't apply to anybody at the table,
No,
right?
no, no, no,
no, no.
Okay, very good. All right.
Okay.
So one of the great things about our audience is they keep an eye on what's going on at the legislature, and they'll identify topics that aren't necessarily the subject of great public discussion. So here's one from a viewer in East Bethel who wants to know what the panel thinks about Senator Dan Schoen's bill to prohibit hunting via drone. I confess I didn't know anything about that until 15 seconds ago. Does anybody else here have anything to offer on that issue? Representative Mahoney?
He was a more colleague of yours longer than mine, so you start. Yeah.
You know, it sounds like a Dan bill, but I don't hunt anymore, and I only hunted for a short period of time. And the joy of hunting was tracking through the woods, sitting in the tree stand, or I only did the duck hunting once, and I realized it's just too cold. But walking through the woods, so they'd have to really work hard to convince me that you should be able to hunt by drone.
Well, I wonder, is it for people that are maybe disabled and can't
That might be
physically
the only
walk?
place.
Well, his bill is to prohibit
prohibits it.
His is to ban
Yeah,
it.
To
no,
prohibit it.
when you see how ISIS is now using drones as weapons, I don't think we want any drones in the state that are armed. I have a feeling, if I had not heard of the bill until you mentioned it, Barry, but I think if somebody is suggesting using them, I have a feeling there would be strong support to ban it.
I don't want to blow my NRA endorsement, but I got a problem maybe with drones being armed and running around, because that's a whole different surveillance.
Right.
Well, except maybe if they're targeted towards the rabbits that have been going to be heading towards my garden.
Rabbits in your garden?
Yeah.
Rabbits, gophers.
Well, so we'll move on from drones, which we can't identify, to real ID, because, of course, that's the subject there, is identifying people. And that's been the subject of some controversy. We have a couple of viewers who are concerned about that and are wondering how the whole thing is going to work out. Who would like to take a run at updating our viewers on where we stand and maybe whack at where we should perhaps wind up? Anybody?
Well, the House passed it, so it's
House
up to you
okay,
guys.
so we'll pick on the senators. Senator Schoen, I'm sorry, Senator Osmick, and then Senator Marty.
Well, the last time we had this on the floor last year, I wasn't a supporter of it. I still had I had concerns about the security of the non-real ID information. Through committee process and talking with the agency and understanding what their security protocols are, I'm very certain, and I work in that type of an industry. I work in the healthcare industry where you have PHI and PII information, that you have to keep it secure and keep it away from prying eyes that shouldn't get access to it. And that's what a lot of people are concerned about on my side of the political aisle, is if I don't want to get this, I don't want to have to get this and pay for it. So I'm very certain that the bill as it was written and it was brought to the floor of the Senate, I'm very certain that the security measures are in place. The agency knows what they're doing. They have security protocols actually at the user level to prevent unauthorized access, and that people will be given the choice. If you can have a real ID, or you can have a non-real ID or an unreal ID, so to speak. And I think that's a good accommodation of both. I'll absolutely agree. The federal government did this at the dead of night with very little or no debate, and they slammed it on to states. And I understand that some people think that we should fight the feds. Well, guess what? We have people in January that are going to need to get onto airplanes, and we need to deal with this situation. And unfortunately, it stalled on the Senate floor. We are hopeful that we can maybe find the votes to move this forward. There were All but 5 Republicans voted for this. We didn't get it off the floor, but I'm hoping our Senator Marty and his DFL colleagues, before we're done, can get this done this session.
My first prediction is that it will pass. Something will pass this year on Real ID, and as you mentioned, there will be 2 choices. You can get the Real ID, or you can have the Unreal ID. I like that way of describing it. The Unreal ID, so people have a choice of it. I expect it to happen. There's disputes on several provisions. The one that I want to make sure it's a clean bill that is not addressing the immigrant driver's licenses. I support giving undocumented people driver's licenses. I think it's a matter of public safety. I think for police who stop somebody, know who it is. For all of our sake, to have people who are driving be insured and registered vehicles and licensed drivers, to me, that's a public safety issue. But I want to make sure that that's treated separately. And Senator Dibble offered an amendment on the floor that died on a tie vote. That's where you get very close numbers sometimes in the Senate. Died on a tie vote that would have been the same bill that Senator Pratt brought to the Senate floor, but it took out all the language he had that was saying this could not be used in this way and cementing in place the provisions we have right now. I think we should leave that issue aside, deal with that separately, and I'm supporting a clean bill without that, and that's what died on a tie vote, and then the bill itself lost, the full bill, which was the same thing only with that other language in it, lost by 4 or 5 votes. I'm not sure how the compromise works out, how it plays out. That's just the Senate, and then the House has a different bill too, but I'll predict it will pass this year.
Representative Mahoney?
It's hard to add anything. I think some version of it will pass. I have the same concerns Senator Marty has. I want, if you're on the road and you're driving, I want you to have passed a test. I want you to have insurance. I want a police officer to be able to look at your ID and, okay, yes, this is a real ID or an unreal ID, whatever it might be, but that's you, and I can check this. So I suspect we'll get some version. Whether we'll get the version that Senator Pratt brought forth or not is a different story. I don't think we will.
Representative thoughts?
Well, I supported the bill, passed out of the House, and it gives both options. The individuals that are concerned about their privacy, they would be respected, and individuals that need to travel, whether it's on a plane or need to go to military bases, that's all part of our House bill, and I would hope that that would get passed. And you know, when I think about the illegal immigrants getting access to IDs, I think about the fellow that assaulted the child up in Champlin Park here just this last week, and I think that, you know, that's a concern that people have of, you know, what are we opening ourselves up to, and, you know, is this really the appropriate bill to be attaching that issue to it? So, I mean, those are some of my concerns, and would hope that we take a look at those later.
So let's talk a little bit about K-12 education. Representative Anderson, I'm going to look to you because you introduced this topic very early in our program, indicated it was an area of priority for you. The governor called for, this of course is a budget year, so we're going to be dealing with the amount to be appropriated for elementary and secondary education in Minnesota. And the governor, I think, called for a 2% increase on the formula. I'd be interested in knowing what your view is on the issue and where you think we might wind up. 2%, more or less, about the same, and what other things you think we might see in that area of legislative action. So let's start with you.
Sure. So Representative Loon from Eden Prairie, she's the chair of our K-12 Education Finance Committee, and she's authored legislation herself that would have a 2% increase on the formula, and that goes to every child in the state. And I'm a co-author of that bill as well. I think that education is important. It's a key to our success as a state. And so, that's all part of the conversation. But today we also had a different conversation when it comes to education. We talked about the last in, first out provision that we have in contracts in our schools. And what Minnesota has as a policy is that if the school district and the teachers union can't come to an agreement on how they're going to make staffing changes, it automatically goes to seniority only based staffing changes. And so today we had legislation on the House floor that we passed that would say that the school districts and the teachers union need to come to an agreement of what their policy will be. And they can't just default to have it only based on seniority. So if a school district decides to take measures into a place that looks at performance, looks at the needs, and so forth, I think that's good for our students and puts us in a better position in having great schools.
Senator Marty?
I wasn't familiar with the House vote on that. I guess first of all, in terms of overall funding, I think I'm glad to hear the House is talking about a 2% increase on the formula, which the governor is backing, and I think there's a decent chance it'll happen. I think we need to, I'm a big believer in, again, investing in education. In terms of the so-called teacher tenure and who we lay off first, my first response to that is always, I'm not sure why we want to be laying off teachers in the first place. I have real concerns that instead of spending all our time, who should be laid off first, why are we laying off teachers in the first place? I've never heard anybody say that's going to improve education. When there are layoffs, if we're going to do something other than seniority, who grades, who decides? I mean, my concern is we're now trying to do in healthcare what we've been doing in education. We're going to grade everybody and we're going to grade the teachers. How do you grade a teacher? I mean, I can see two ways. The way that might be the most accurate, but it's the most subjective, is have a principal and have others go in the room and observe the teachers and how they interact with people and so on. That way you can get a sense of how good of a teacher is. I think any of us would say we could do a pretty good job of getting a sense of that. How do you do it to stop favoritism where somebody does that? So what do we do instead? We grade them based on the outcome of their kids. Outcome of their kids is a pretty difficult task because the teachers who have the most difficult, most challenging kids are the ones who are going to look much worse. You could be a far better teacher, and if you have kids that are more challenging, you may have worse outcomes in your students. And so I have real concerns about how who judges. And because of that, until we have a better system of knowing who's making the judgment, who's making the determination, I think seniority is a reasonable way. And yes, if the teachers and the administration and the school board can come up with a different alternative, fine. But saying we're going to mandate something else, I have real concern that that's not improving education. Instead, it's going to pit teachers one against another to see who can get the easiest students. And I talked to one teacher a couple of years ago who said he prided himself. He thought he could deal best with the most challenging kids. He was a teacher with more seniority. He said, it'd be stupid to do that if we're grading teachers. I'd take the easy students and push them off. Not that I don't care about them anymore, but I get I'm going to look like a lousy teacher if I take them, even though I think I'm doing a pretty good job. So that's my concern, is if we're going to do anything other than seniority, and it's not something that everybody agrees is a fair way to do it, who's grading the teachers? Who's making that decision?
That's a huge disservice to our parents and our students if we're just going to have the default go to just seniority based, because that's not a real indication of whether that person, one, meets the needs of the school district or meets the needs of the children that they are going to be teaching. And I think all of us in whatever position that we have in life, we get judged on our performance. And we as lawmakers get judged on our performance.
I'd love to have people judge people on their performance, but how do you judge somebody based on the outcome of their students? We're trying to do the same thing with doctors now. I just got a note from a doctor who worked at Fremont Clinic, a low-income clinic in Minneapolis. Her score, she was a lousy doctor. All the tests, all the measures said she was a lousy doctor. She went to Fairview University, much higher income clinic, different patient clientele. She got rave reviews. She got performance awards and bonuses because of the way she treated people with diabetes, just looking at the diabetes measures, because that's one of the areas we try and measure. Then she went to the West Side Clinic in St. Paul, low-income clinic. Again, she's a lousy doctor. She didn't change. She's a good doctor or a bad doctor or whatever, but she was a good doctor at all three places. But because of her patient base, she gets lousy scores. you do the same thing in schools. So I don't disagree at all about grading teachers and trying to measure people by performance. Who's grading them and how are they grading them, and is the system a good grade? If it's an unfair grade, then you're doing a huge disservice by getting rid of what might be the best teachers because they're dealing with the most challenging students. That's why I don't have any problem with grading them. I just want to know whose grading system we're using and who's making that judgment.
Well, I've had two school districts in my, two school teachers in my district that said that they were laid off simply for the fact that they were hired a day or a week later than somebody else. And it wasn't based anything on their performance. They said they did a good job, their school loved them, their students loved them, the parents loved them. And how is that doing a service to our teachers either? Then we're saying
not
we're
saying
not
it
going to
is. I'm not
reward
saying it's
good.
perfect.
We're not going to reward good teachers, and I think that's really demoralizing for those good school teachers because then they say, well, then what's the use? It's not based on my performance at all. It's merely based on how long I've been here.
See, this is why we don't need St. Paul solutions or Washington solutions. This really should be a decision that's made by the school board or by your elected officials at the school level. And us sitting around the table saying, let's figure this out, I mean, we should be giving the flexibility for our school districts and our locals to be able to make that decision. And you know what? What will happen? Instead of St. Paul making the decision, maybe they'll solve the solution for us at one of the school districts, and we can use that as an incubator for the rest of the state. They may come, that's the great part about having independent school districts is they can come up with solutions that we can't even think of right now.
Well, they have that. It's called a negotiated contract, and, you know, that's the default. You either have the default, or you figure out what's the, what you're going to put in your contract. Bigger problem for us is how many young teachers are leaving the field. You know, we vilify teachers, we pay them particularly the first years, poorly. We give them some of the roughest classes. We, you know, and then we blame them when our kids don't do as well as we expect them to. And who's ever said our kid isn't expected to be an A student? No one. So there is a way for that. It's called negotiating. And if you want that, what else are you going to give up? Or what are they willing to give up to keep that priority-based hiring and firing or layoffs? So there is a solution to that, and sitting across the table, maybe in a room with I guess you couldn't have a smoke-filled room anymore.
No smoke.
Maybe that would help, though, and get them done quick.
Smoke-filled rooms have become more popular of late. All right, well, I suppose we're not going to resolve this issue either.
No.
I want to go back to a question you raised earlier, Representative Mahoney, and this is a question from a viewer in the Little Falls area. And this viewer is wondering what our thoughts are about Representative Creecia's, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right, House File 2140 dealing with opiate abuse prevention, a pilot project out of St. Gabriel's Hospital and Little Falls, and efforts to deal with opiate abuse reduction. So I'm going to pick on you simply because you introduced the topic, but I'm interested in what everybody has to say about that.
Well, it's a growing crisis, not just a growing problem, it's a growing crisis. And you have people, we tried to put things in place where, and actually they did do some of that, where it made it more difficult for patients to doctor shop or doctor hop or whatever it is to get a prescription. But we have to take it a little farther. We have to take it even much more than a little farther. We actually need to start treating it as a mental health issue and getting people settled down. I know an awful lot of people that are in recovery. The real key is people need to get their brains kind of clear and then understand what they did to themselves. And they're not going to recover unless they want to recover. It's the easiest thing in the world to slip back into using drugs of any kind once you've gotten into that habit. Do we need more money for treatment? Well, maybe that's something we could do if we started legalizing marijuana, and we could just push all that into there. But we do need more money into the recovery. The particular bill, whether it's in where I don't remember.
Little Falls.
Little Falls. I didn't read that particular bill directly, but at this particular time, that's one of the things I think we could actually put people in prison for.
Since it's a House
Going
bill,
the wrong way.
let me pick on you, Representative Anderson. What do you think about that issue? And do you know anything about this particular bill?
Our caucus has talked about this issue quite a bit. We have Representative Baker from the Wilmer area that had a child that suffered from the abuse, and I can't imagine as a parent going through that. And Representative Crecia does a great job from Little Falls in tackling this issue and seeing how can we do better for these individuals that are just debilitated by this abuse. And so, I think it's good when we take a pilot project and use that as a small measure to see, is this the right path? And it will give us an indication if this is the right ticket to treating it. So I think it has some real potential.
It has some legs, potential some legs?
Yeah, he does
Senator?
a good job.
Yeah, both Representative Baker and Senator Chris Eaton, both of them have lost a child to opiate overdose. And I can't picture a more tragic thing to deal with. And there you got both parties, both houses who are deeply troubled by this and trying to do things. I know Senator Eaton and Senator Rosen, again, that's a bipartisan mix, have been working on a proposal where they would try and get funding to help address some of the treatment and all the other needs on a small assessment on the manufacturers of opioids. And it was interesting, it passed out of the Senate Health and Human Services Committee the other day with pretty strong support. I mean, I don't know, I didn't hear anybody vote against it. I think it was a roll call vote and maybe one person passed, but everybody was supporting it. It's a crisis, and I do think we've got to find a way to get at it, and opioids are very difficult to deal with. It's a whole range of things, how they get access to it, but also getting them treatment.
About 15 seconds is all I've got left for you. Any thoughts on this bill?
Try something different is always a good approach. That's the one thing the state can do is invest in trying something different, and a pilot project is a perfect way to see if we can make a difference.
Very good. I want to thank our panel for a great program this evening. I want to thank you, the viewers, for joining us this evening. I want to invite you to return next week and all the weeks that follow till the legislature goes home for your legislators. Thank you and good evening.
There's much more about Your Legislators online at pioneer.org/yourlegislators. Find out more about the history of the program, who has been a guest, and watch past episodes and discussions by topic. There's also a photo gallery, informative links, and much more. To continue the conversation, follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you for watching Your Legislators. Your Legislators is made possible in part by the generous financial support of Southern Minnesota Beet Sugar Cooperative, a highly sustainable, shareholder-driven cooperative that safely produces, processes, and markets sugar while being environmental stewards to ensure future opportunities for its shareholders, employees, and surrounding communities. Additional support: making Minnesota clean waters, safe communities, quality education, and veterans care happen. We work hard for Minnesotans. And by Ask Me Council 5, a union of 43,000 members who advocate for excellence in public services, dignity in the workplace, and opportunity and prosperity for all working families.